Morning in progress.
All right. Good morning.
Morning.
So, how we studied James last time. How did everybody? How did that go for everybody?
Good.
Yeah.
I like how straightforward he is.
I do too. Um, I thought it was kind of crazy because, and you know this, and you know this, when we studied James 2 Tuesdays ago, and then Wednesday we go to Bible study, and that's what Andy was starting to study in the book of James. So that was pretty cool, but it nerve-wracking at the same time because now you're like, oh, I hope I didn't say anything stupid, and the preacher's gonna say something exactly the opposite. But no, it actually was really cool and it was really good. He confirmed a lot of the things that we had mentioned. And one of the coolest things that he kind of elaborated on was the fact that since we know that it was one of the earliest manuscripts in the New Testament, when James was writing that letter, it was most likely during the time of Acts when Paul and Barnabas and all of them were out preaching the Gospels. And he was the leader of the church in Jerusalem. So he was kind of like the main guy. Oh, absolutely not, ma'am. I know where you're trying to go. So that was really cool. And we had talked about how, that was James's brother. And in the beginning, when Jesus was alive, his family did not support him, did not believe in him at all. So it's kind of like, well, what happened? And it was Andy was like, I believe it was the resurrection because the Bible does tell us that Jesus appeared to his brothers personally and individually. So if that didn't convert you, I don't know what will. But it's kind of funny. Isn't that a sibling thing to do? Like, you didn't believe me, so now I'm going to haunt you. So that was actually pretty cool and pretty funny. But I like how we're starting with the Second Timothy, the importance of Scripture, and then James, the importance of action. And did anybody else have anything to share on James? Nope. Well, so today we are going to talk about Eve. When we mentioned women in the Bible, as Eve rarely gets any attention when you do like a topical women Bible study. So that's what we're gonna do. The first thing though, I'm gonna go ahead and start sharing. Since we are after the character of God, one of the beautiful things about Genesis is that God reveals himself in the very first page. And in the very you're gonna get down. In the very first verse, we see in the beginning God. And we pass over it all the time, but when we look a little bit deeper to what the Hebrew word for God was, Elohim, um, it means infinite strength and absolute faithfulness. And I absolutely love that. It just gives me such a good picture of who God is. His strength and his power has no limits, and his faithfulness cannot be questioned. It is just absolute and infinite. And so if we move on a little bit further to Genesis 2:4, then, and this is after the 7-day creation, and he um created man and male and female, then we see the Lord God, and the Lord is actually in caps, and that's what we typically Jehovah, Yahweh, and then the YHWH. That's the original Hebrew, and that means I am. When he revealed himself to Moses in Exodus, and Moses said, who should I tell him sent me? And he said, I am. And the I am that I am, that's the name that he revealed to Moses. So it's kind of cool if you put them together. So after Genesis 2:4, it is the Lord God, and that is Yahweh Elohim. I am infinite strength and absolute faithfulness. And I love that because it just reveals so much about who God is. And we see he is so vast and so big and powerful that our little minds can't even wrap ourselves, we can't even wrap our minds around just how big and powerful God is. But he loves us on an individual, deep, intimate, personal level. He knows us better than we know ourselves, and he knit together us in our mother's womb. So to have such a vast and limitless God that loves us personally, it's just kind of mind-blowing when you sit there and think about it. So we can't pass up the opportunity when God reveals himself to us to ponder on that a little bit and meditate on that a little bit and just let it wash over us. I think it gets me fired up really to think about it. Like, wow, the God of the universe loves me individually. That's something that just blows my mind every single time. So in the first chapter, we see the 6 days of creation, right? He created the heavens and the earth, and he created the animals, he separated the night and the day. And if you look at it, everything that he had created was good until it wasn't. And we get to Eve, and the woman that we blame everything on, that poor woman. Have you ever had a problem or made a mistake that you just knew you were not ever going to live down? Like, people just kept bringing it up and kept bringing it up. And I imagine that that's how Eve feels. A lot of times we forgo everything positive about Eve and just, well, if you hadn't have eaten the fruit, if you hadn't have kicked us out of the Garden of Eden,
I
we
so disagree with that.
yeah, I do too. I do too. But it's definitely something that we as a society do to poor Eve. And it reminds me of the time when I made a mistake that I knew I was never going to live down, but I shredded a customer's tax return full of the original documents and everything.
Oh.
And it was right before it was when I worked at that big brick and mortar tax company. They had left their stuff there for forever. And part of our process is we go through all of the documents that people leave, and we call them and we call them and we call them to come and finish their stuff. And a lot of times it becomes evident that they're just not going to show up, right? So at the end of tax season, all their documents get shipped to our corporate office. And because we don't have if we had to save every document that was left there, we wouldn't have room for anything else. But no ma'am, no ma'am, no ma'am, you can't have any more. So I was doing that. It was the end of tax season. I was getting ready to close up my offices, and it was the year that it was 2020. So it was when Barrett was going to have his surgery. So we were like a week before Barrett had his surgery. So that's where I was at mentally. And I was going through all of the stuff that people had just abandoned their paperwork. And I was following the process. You're supposed to take their original documents out, put it in a file with all the other ones, and then throw everything else in the shredder. I didn't. I don't know what I was thinking, but I remember the specific customer. They had a very distinct last name, and I remember that. And for some reason, I guess I just threw everything in the shredder instead of what I was supposed to do. And the document company came and got their stuff, or came and got the shred bin and took it away. And then they showed up wanting their paperwork. And when I tried to explain, now a sidebar, if you lose your original documents, it's really not the end of the world. It's kind of this day and age, especially the last 5 or so years, it's kind of just a bump in the road. It's like an inconvenience. You can get it. But even 10 years ago, it was an inconvenience for sure, but it was not the end of the world. You can always have those documents replaced. But this girl did not know that, and she threw a fit, and she screamed, and she yelled, and she called corporate, and I was going to get fired, and she was going to get a tax attorney. And I was not, like I said, I'm very professional, so I was like, here's how I can help you here's how I can help you with this, and here's how we can make it right. You know, I'm offering her solutions that would have benefited her, but she didn't want to hear it. And I was like, you know, I've done all I can do for you. What else do you want? You know, and when she told me that she was going to get a tax attorney, I had to stop myself from laughing because it's not really what tax attorneys do. And they're not going to take a case that because your documents that you left for months got shredded. That's just not how that works. But she called corporate and she demanded my job and she threatened to sue. And I heard from it from my boss and my boss's boss. I mean, I heard about it and it just never, I've never thought it was going to end. But, you know, to give her a little bit of grace, she was also saying she was on the phone with her husband and she was like, I'm trying to be a good Christian about all of this. And I'm like, you're screaming at me and wanting my job. But to give her a little bit of grace, you know, I was going through it. She probably could have been going through it too, or she was a new Christian and maybe didn't know how to handle, you know, that situation. So I want to give her a little bit of grace too. It was not a good situation for her either. And I just remember that situation is burned in my memory for forever. I never lived that one down. And but thankfully God being rich in mercy, he caused me to forget her name and what she looks like. Like I can't stalk her on Facebook. And like I said, she had a distinctive last name. I remembered it, but I can't anymore. And hopefully I'm hoping that that means that one day maybe we'll meet each other outside of that huge mistake in that ugly moment and meet each other in our true identities. That's what I'm hoping. I hope for her she's forgotten all about me too. But that's what I want to do for Eve today. I want to forget about the mistake that she is famous for. Go to her if she wants you. I want to forget about the mistake that she made and to meet her in her true identity. And that's what we're going to do today. So like I said earlier, Genesis 1, we see the creation account, and every day, every time God did something, he saw that it was good. And it even says that he said, let us make man in our image and likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the heaven and over the livestock and everything that creeps over the earth. And the last verse of chapter 1, verse 1 verse 31, God saw that everything he had made, and behold, it was very good. And then there was the evening and the morning of the sixth day. So chapter 2 goes into a little bit more detail about the creation of male and female. And that's where we get to the first problem of creation, the very first problem. And we find that in chapter 2, verse 18. It says, then the Lord God said, it is not good that the man should be alone. I will make him a helper fit for him. I think I need to change. There we go. Okay. The second page, the first problem. I will make him a helper fit for him. So in my version, it says helper fit for him. And Via, I'm curious to see what yours, because yours is the New King James, right?
Yes.
Okay. Does yours say help me? In chapter 2, verse 18.
I have to put my glasses on.
Mine says helper.
Yours says helper. Is
Well, I
it
can read on that side.
helper suitable? Yours says helper suitable.
Let me look in this.
Says, and the Lord, it is not good that man should be alone. I will make him a. What is the rest of it? It's over here.
Yeah.
Oh, it's on the next page. Helper comparable to him.
Comparable to him. Okay.
So yours is right here.
Okay.
And then on the next page.
Thank you.
And what does yours say?
I will make him a helper suitable for him.
Helper suitable for him?
What mine said.
Okay.
Helper suitable.
I was curious via what yours says because since you're the New King James, but the King James version says helpmeet for him. I will make a helpmeet for him, which is a weird, not something to use in everyday conversation, right?
Mhm.
Helpmeet. And the original Hebrew, the ancient Hebrew is Ezer Kenegdo, which the definition is helper, aid, ally for Ezer. It's 2 words. It's often used as a military term to somebody who will aid and rescue you. That's what Ezer means. And Kenegdo is opposite to, it sometimes means against, opposite to, counterpart, or suitable. And it's Ezer Kenegdo together basically means helper or equal counterpart or helper suitable, or it is something that is not inferior and not superior. It is an equal helper. And if you look, we like to talk about, or society does like to pin male and female against each other, right?
Yeah.
And if you think about what God says, he says, I will make a helper suitable or a helper fit in Ezer Kenegdo. He is not saying, I will make him a servant inferior to him. Or he does not say, I will make him a supervisor superior to him. Because if the problem would have been solved by an inferior being. If you look again, he gave us dominion over, the next verse says, out of the ground, the Lord had formed every beast of the field and every bird of the heavens and brought to the man to see what he would call them. And whatever the man called every living creature, that was his name. The man gave names to all the livestock and to the birds of the heavens and every beast of the field. But for Adam, there was not found a helper fit for him. So it was not an inferior being wouldn't do. And if you think about what livestock he must have seen, there had to have been perfectly suitable working animals, horses, dogs, oxen, camels, and when we skip a little bit further into the story, we know that the serpent spoke to Eve and she didn't run away screaming. She wasn't surprised in the slightest. So we can speculate and maybe, wrestle with, could the animals actually communicate with us back then? So if you imagine like a horse that you could speak to, that would be an amazing helper, an amazing, partner for Adam, but it just wasn't. There just was something missing that Adam couldn't even give word to because he didn't know. So yeah, I think it's very important when we look at the original Hebrew, the aid, ally. I love ally. I think that's probably the best way. I think that really cements an ally counterpart or an ally opposite to. We're not meant to be the same as men. God never intended us to be the same as men. We are meant to be equal. And I love that. And then we can see what Adam says when we can skip ahead to 23. And then the man said, this at last is bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh, and she shall be called woman because she was taken out of man. So the first problem ever was solved by a woman. The whole creation of woman. We forget, we love to be Eve, and society loves to be Eve. Churches, religion loves to, present Eve and also womankind as a problem, when really she was a solution. And what we bring to the world is a solution. The world would not be right without women. And I wrestled with this a lot because I was like, well, okay, God, what does that mean then? What does it mean to be equal but opposite too? Should we all quit our jobs and do the homestead thing and that'd be great. I'd love it, but I can't really afford to right now. And I tried to peel back just all the layers that society and religion and we tell ourselves about what womanhood really is. And unfortunately, the more I prayed about it and the more I tried to peel back the layers, the more vague it got. So I don't really believe that there is an exact, a man is supposed to do this and a woman is supposed to do that. I think we are just meant to bring our strengths to the table, men bring their strengths to the table and work together. Like we aren't ever meant to have this exact same strengths and the exact same weaknesses because nothing would ever get done, you know? So I'm hoping that makes sense. I feel like that one got away from me. But then my point to ponder though, the main thing that I've wrestled with in this specific Bible study is the fact that if God is infinitely powerful and his creation was good, how could there have been a problem before the first sin was introduced?
But wasn't sin there? That's why the tree was there.
Well, but it hadn't
Been released.
been released yet. Yeah, like the possibility was there. And I even thought about, well, the fact that the serpent the serpent was there, Satan was there already. But in the first two chapters, we don't see anything but God in his Elohim existence and then in his Yahweh Elohim existence. Um, there's still just it bothers me that there was a problem, I guess you could say. And I wrestled with that and I wrestled with that. And the thing that I feel like I came, because it even says in verse 1, it just says he made them male and female, or not verse 1, chapter 1, verse 26, that he made man and woman in his image. And why didn't the story just leave it at that? That I wrestled with that. Like, what in the world? We would have been fine just saying, okay, he made a male and female and we're good. Because most of the time that's how we see it anyways. We just kind of skip over the creation story. But to me, I do feel very strongly like I know God does everything. He has a purpose for everything. And so I feel like we are meant to ponder on this. It's put in the story for a reason. And I do think it is so that we can walk in our identity as a solution, that we can see how male and female, the purposes and our identity. Adam was the first one created and it was good, but then it was not good that he be alone and he needed a counterpart. So I think that is what, in my opinion, that's what I believe the story is there for. But again, like I said, I feel like that's something for us to ponder. And our homework for this time is to read the creation story. So Genesis chapter 1 through through chapter 3. And the next time we will study the fall and Eve's mistake and what that means for us today.
I want you to read something. This was in my Bible about the creation of a woman.
God identified himself as a helper, and it has the ezer, and that's used quite a bit to Israel. The word does not imply inferiority. It describes function rather than worth. No one loses value in humbly assuming the role as a helper. As a helper to the man, the woman became his partner spiritually in the overwhelming task of obedience to God and dominion over the earth. She was also a vital part of extending the generations. Exactly. The woman, as ultimate friend to the man, would bring him comfort and fellowship. No one else could encourage or inspire him as she was created to do. The face suitable to him, in the Hebrew kenegdo, corresponding to what was in front of him. occurs only in verses 18 and 20, emphasizing the commonality of the man and the woman. Designed as the perfect counterparts of the man, woman was neither inferior nor superior, but she was alike and equal to the man in her personhood, while different and unique in her function. That is super cool. Man and woman were both created in God's image, just as man was formed from earth, woman is formed from man. She corresponds perfectly to the man, the same flesh and blood, the image of God, just as the man, equal to him in every way. But by the creative act itself, she is inseparably linked to the man. The unity of the race is assured, the woman's dignity and worth is affirmed, and the foundation for Christian marriage is set forth in a memorable way. Woman is not an afterthought. She was designed and created physically, emotionally, socially, and spiritually with her coming creation planned and assured. In fact, God said the man alone was not good and he needed the woman. God made the man from the dust of the ground, but he made woman from one of Adam's ribs. God uses Adam to express the uniqueness of the woman in a unique play on words. Even the language itself reflects the unity God planned between the man and the woman. The expression bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh occurs elsewhere in the Old Testament as an expression of blood relationship. Through Adam's naming of the woman does not in its though Adam's naming of the woman does not in itself require his authority over her, the act of assigning a name in Oriental culture, even to now, is significant and in most cases imply both authority and responsibility. Note, for example, the naming of the animals, Pharaoh renaming Joseph, the renaming of Mattaniah by Nebuchadnezzar, the renaming of Daniel by his friends and his friends by Nebuchadnezzar's eunuch, and the woman's name is a recognition of her origins, in the same way that Adam's name acknowledges his creation from earth. That was good. That was really good.
I always had heard that a woman was formed to be the servant,
Mm-hmm.
not the way.
Yeah.
the-
And I think that's just unfortunately, and we'll dig into a little bit to that next time, but I just think that's the deception from Satan that we've
Yeah,
and if you think about if men and women fully stepped into their identities and fully embraced their roles, and not even in marriages but in just like worldwide, if we were actually a partnership, the devil would be running scared. Like so many problems in this world would be resolved because so much of our problems are unfortunately self-inflicted. You're such a mess by humanity, by the fact that we just cannot agree on things. And if we, I don't know, I like to think, what would it look like if I stepped in and my confidence level went up to, I am a solution to your problem, dude. Like, but like I'm not a problem. I am a solution. I think that a lot of things would be a little bit easier. And if Danny or mankind, like I said, stepped in, they're the men and they know their role, which whatever that is, it could be staying at home taking care of the kids. It could be, being a hunter gatherer, manly man kind of thing. Just whatever God put inside of you. And I guess that's for us to ponder. But next time we will discuss the fall and what that means for us as women too. Because now we have our identity and our purpose, but now we have our first attack against it. So that will be next week. Does anybody have any questions before I end it?
no,
No. I do feel like this one got away from you guys. I'm sorry. Was it confusing? No?
Oh, shit, I felt-
Did it?
Yeah.
I'm glad because